Good day, learners. From the stable of Lagos State's Ministry of Basic and Secondary Education, Education Resource Center, we have come forward to give you some tips about certain topics that are of importance in biology practicals. As you all know, if you can do well in your biology practicals, you are good to go in the entire requirement to pass biology. Now, what are the areas that we are talking about today? Number one, we would like to give you tips about how to draw. In your biology practical exam, you are drawing nothing less than 2 diagrams. And that is why you need to know the nitty-gritty about drawing in biology. You'll be taught about the details, about how to find the size, about the title, magnification, and so on. Then the second area is that we'll also be giving you tips on classification. How do you classify every living organism in biology? What are the hierarchy that you need to know for you to be able to classify living organisms successfully? And the third aspect, we'll also be giving you tips on adaptive features of organisms. What are the features that every organism possesses for them to be able to live successfully in their environment? These are some of the things that you need to know before you go out to go and write that biology practical exam. And lastly, we'll also be talking to you about tips on fruit. We are going to talk to you about classes of fruit. How do you classify fruit? If you see a mango fruit, if you see an apple fruit, if you see a pawpaw fruit, what are the classes that they belong to? And I hope as you are joining us, you are going to learn a lot. Happy viewing. Come along with us.
E-Science Practicals, achieving success in science subjects.
Good day, students. I am Mr. Ario Moses Adeshola. And in today's biology class, I'll be taking you on tips on answering questions on adaptive features. When we talk about adaptive features, where does it come from? It comes from the word adaptation. But before we proceed, I would like to share with you the learning objectives in this class. Number one, at the end of this class, you will be able to give the meaning of adaptation. And number two, you'll be able to give the 3 types of adaptation. Number 3, you'll be able to answer some practice questions on about 4 specimens that will be presented to you. And also, you'll be able to state the importance of adaptation to organisms. So let's go with our first learning objectives. What is the meaning of adaptation? Adaptation is the process or ability of living organisms to be able to live successfully in their environment or habitat as a result of certain features that they possess. And these features are structural features, behavioral features, as well as physiological features. Now, let's move to the second learning objective. What are the types of adaptations? As I said earlier on, every living organism can only live successfully in its habitat if it possesses 3 types of adaptations, which are 1, the structural adaptations. When we talk about structural adaptations, we mean the physical features, the physical parts of an organism that enables it to be able to live in its habitat. Then, number 2, when we talk about behavioral adaptations, it means what the organism is doing. It means how the organism behaves to be able to live successfully in its habitat. And the third type of adaptation is the physiological adaptation, which has to do with the processes that takes place within an organism and the functions of some of the parts or organs that it possesses for it to be able to live successfully in its habitat. What is our third learning objective? We want to know the importance of adaptation to an organism. Number 1, every organism has these adaptive features to be able to obtain food. You all know that food is very, very important to every living organism. Number 2, for escape and defense. Escape from the predator and defense too. Number 3, regulation of body temperature. And number 4, to be able to secure mates. And the last importance of adaptive feature or of adaptation is for conservation of water. Now, let's go to the real business of today's class. We want to look at some practice questions about 4 specimens that I have here. My specimen A is tilapia fish. My specimen B is a rat. My specimen C is a toad. And my specimen D is a cactus plant. So the first practice question that we want to state 4 observable structural features of each of these organisms that enable them to be able to live successfully in their habitat. So I will pick my first specimen, which is a tilapia fish. And as you can see on the screen, you can see the beautiful picture of a tilapia fish. When I pick a tilapia fish, mind you, when we talk about observable features, they are features that are evidently seen. Take, for instance, look at me now. If I ask you to state some observable features about me, I believe you learners watching me, you will begin to say, 1, I am tall and I'm lanky. You cannot say, I know how to drive. Why? Because you have not seen me driving a car, and you cannot deduce that by mere looking at me. So let's go to our question now. What are the observable features of tilapia fish? Number 1, there is presence of fins. There is presence of fins, and these fins, it's used by the organism for what? For swimming. It's an aquatic animal, so it possesses all these fins to be able to swim in water. The second point is that when you look at this, you can see it has scales. The presence of scales to be able to protect itself. You can see when you give the feature, you must also give the function. Presence of scales for protection. And number 3, on this same specimen A, is that it has a streamlined body. When we say streamlined body, we mean that it's pointed. This streamlined body enables it to swim in water. And number 4, when you open up this part of the tilapia fish called the operculum or the gill cover, you are going to see gills inside. It possesses gills for gaseous exchange or for breathing. And the last, tilapia fish has a lateral line for detection of vibrations. Now, let's move to our second specimen, which is a rat. From the previous class, you must have been told the kingdom and the phylum and the class that a rat belongs. So, how does a rat adapt itself to be able to live successfully in its habitat? Number 1, it has external ear, which are called a pinna. Why does it have that? It possesses this to be able to hear. Number 2, you see that the body of a rat is covered with fur. That is for regulation of temperature. And number 3, the rat has whiskers. It has whiskers for it to be able to detect vibration. And when you check through the mouth, the rat has sharp incisors for feeding. As you all know, that they are majorly herbivorous animals. Then, lastly, as you can see, it has limbs. The limbs at the front part are called the forelimbs, and the ones behind are called hind limbs. The hind limbs, when you observe it, also end with claws. This enables the animal to be able to dig and to be able to scratch. Now, let's move to the third specimen, which is a toad. What are the adaptive features of a toad? What are those things you can see when you pick up a toad? Look at the eyes. The eyes of a toad are bulging. They are round and big. What is the function? For the animal to be able to see a wide range of distance around its habitat. And number two, the toad, when you check through the mouth, it has a long and sticky tongue, which it uses to catch prey and to hold prey. And then the next structural feature we are going to see here is that the toes, the limbs of a toad end with webs. So we always say it possesses a webbed foot. For what? For it to be able to swim in water. A toad also has a streamlined body, a pointed body, also for swimming in water. And then it also possesses long and strong limbs for hopping through its environment. And the fourth specimen, this is representing a plant. This is cactus plants. What are the adaptive features of a cactus plant? As you will see notably, number one is that a cactus plant possesses spines. Some of you must have been calling it chuku chuku, but it's not. It is called spines, something that looks like thorns. And the function of those spines is that, number one, it uses them for protection against predators. And not only that, it also helps the organism to reduce water loss. Because you know, cactus plant is a xerophyte. That means a plant that lives in extremely dry places. So it has these structural features to be able to reduce the water loss from its body. Then number two, you can see that the stem are succulent. The stem are succulent. Why? Also to conserve water. Number three, the stem, as you can see, it's what in color? Green. So in essence, and when you hear green in plants, in biology, what will come to your mind? Photosynthesis. So a cactus plant also carry out photosynthesis because of the chlorophyll that it possesses, and that is why it is green in color. Then number four, it has a sunken stomata. The stomata are reduced also to reduce water loss. Now, let's go to the next practice question. The next practice question says that we should state about 4 observable differences between specimen A and specimen B. Specimen A is tilapia fish, specimen B is rat. Now, when you are to answer question on differences in an exam, the first thing that you should do is you draw a table. There are so many past questions that if a student does not draw the table, they will say remove 1 mark. So for you to draw a table can fetch you that first 1 mark. So draw a table. On the left side, put specimen A. On the right side, put specimen B. Now, what do you see in specimen A that is not in specimen B? Or what do you see, what do you observe in specimen B that is not in specimen A? Now, let's go. Specimen A, as you can see, because it's what you can observe. It possesses what? Scales. But when you look at specimen B, there is absence of what? Scales. Another point is that specimen A possesses a fin. told you earlier on that it uses fin for movement in water. But specimen B, there is absence of what? Fin. Also, mind you, when you are giving differences, the point must correspond. When you say A possesses this, then when you go back to B, you will say B does not possess this. Let me take it again. You don't say specimen A possesses scales, and in the corresponding place, you now say specimen B possesses 4. Even though you are right, but you will not get the mark because the points are not corresponding. So specimen A possesses scales, specimen B does not possess scales. That is that. Then another thing is that specimen A, there is absence of whiskers, while specimen B possess what? Or presence of whiskers. Then specimen A, there is also absence of forelimbs, but in a specimen B, there is presence of forelimbs. The same thing, specimen A, there is absence of hindlimbs, and in specimen B, there is a presence of hindlimbs. What are the two similarities that we can see between A and B? When you want to write answers on similarities, make sure you put they both possess. So number one, as you can see from here, they both have what? Tail. Then number two, they both have mouth. You can say they both possess mouth, or you can say they both have mouth. Now let's go to the next practice question. That one is on specimen A and C. Tilapia fish and toad. What are the 4 observable differences between specimen A and C? 1. Specimen A, there is presence of fin, and in the corresponding part for specimen C, there is absence of fin. 2. There is absence of forelimb, but in specimen C, there is presence of forelimb. Specimen A, there is absence of hindlimb, but in specimen C, there is presence of hindlimb. And when you look at specimen A, the eyes are not bulging. They are not that big and round. But specimen C, the eyes are bulging. And then the last, specimen C, there is presence of webbed feet. But specimen A, there is absence of webbed feet. What are the similarities between A and C? They both have eyes and they both have mouths. With these little things you have seen today, you should be able to answer questions on adaptive features if you see it in your exam. Thanks for listening.